All right, Jimmie Ward agrees to come to the Texans. I've neglected you guys. I know. It's been free agency all week long, starting with the legal tampering period. And it's been, I don't want to say underwhelming. I think that this is pretty much what I expected. I had some secret hopes that maybe the Texans go after one of the big time guys, but it's been a whole lot of 1 and 2 year contracts. And it's an amped up version of what the Texans had been doing in the previous 2 years, where the Texans had been signing kind of journeyman type guys who weren't necessarily huge impact players, but could keep you from being too embarrassing of a product. Well, the younger guys advanced and hopefully got some tutelage from guys like, Christian Kirksey, other good, solid NFL players, but not necessarily potential Pro Bowlers. I think Jimmie Ward and Sheldon Rankins and a lot of these guys are amped up versions of that. Robert Woods, guys on 1 and 2 year deals. They're still good football players. They're going to improve the team over what they had been, but at a slightly higher price tag, but not something that's going to hurt you in a few years when you'd like to sign when the team should be more competitive, and you're going to have to re-sign some of these younger guys. Hopefully Derek Stingleys of the world will be wanting their second contract. It clears the room for that if everything goes well. As far as Jimmie Ward himself, look, I knew what he was as a player, hard-hitting guy, capable as a safety goes, very capable in man coverage. The last few years before this year, he'd been predominantly a free safety. Earlier in his career, he'd actually played a lot of nickel corner or slot corner, and that's what he ended up spending the vast majority of his time doing this year. And there was a little bit of controversy over exactly moving to that position, whether he wanted to or didn't want to. And we'll get to some of that. But just to whet your appetite a little bit, here's just a few highlights of him first. Are like what he's known for, hard hits. Good tackling, which we'll talk about also. Like tackling by modern DB standards, which is
either heat
sometimes flinging yourself at somebody. This next bit is Trent Williams and Tyrann Mathieu talking about him leading into last year. Trent Williams was his teammate with the 49ers. Tyrann Mathieu, just another safety, talking about a safety. And this was when Jimmie Ward was named to the NFL top 100 list that they do in the offseason. This is where the players vote on it. And he was on this for the first time. I think you're going to get the kind of a measure of the respect that a lot of guys have for Jimmie Ward, why he's a captain. There's some things about Jimmie Ward that are like super interesting. He is a truth teller. He's not going to BS anybody. And that's what you start to see later on. But this is Trent Williams, Tyrann Mathieu talking about him.
Missile.
He's seeking missile.
Athletically gifted as any free safety.
First, I got to add it right. Why is that not doing it for you? Okay. Heat-seeking missile.
In the league.
Ball got banded up in the air and intercepted by Jimmie Ward.
Here's the snap, the placement, and the kick is blocked.
Looks like Jimmie Ward got in there.
You look at him tackling in the open field.
It is 4th down and 1. Coming wide left, and Jimmie Ward got in there.
I love Jimmie. The whole team. I mean, he's like a glue guy. He has that dog that you just can't teach. He's a heat-seeking missile. That's stuff that you beg for in a football player, and it's his natural makeup. He don't try to do it. That's just him.
Dude, so like that is the dog stuff, you can't teach it, all those kinds of things, glue guy. You hear that so much from so many people, and like he's the classic guy that if he wasn't so good, it would be annoying as hell, but he's really, really good at it, and he's very open about it. We've got some video on here later of him talking to a blogger and telling the blogger why he has disliked that blogger in the past. It's really cool stuff. He's just open and honest. I think that the one part of me that kind of gets a little bit nervous is the whole Ed Reed experience, because Ed Reed, I would argue, is maybe that same kind of guy, except we were getting Ed Reed after Ed Reed had already started his decline. I think this is Jimmie Ward. He's probably in the last couple years of his real peak playing phase, and he's coming off a year where he played slot corner. Juwan True Texan asked if he's coming in as a mentor. That's partly it, and we'll get into that a little bit later, especially when, as many people have mentioned, when it comes to the open field tackling stuff, for Jalen Pitre especially, Pitre will tell you that's what he needs to work on, and I think Derek Stingley too. And it's more than that. It's the ability to play man. It's the understanding of this defense. It's all that. Here's Tyrann Mathieu on Jimmie Ward.
Jimmie wants to hit people, man. Like, he's physical. You know what I mean? And I think that's what you need. There's a lot of physical safeties out there, and I think he's probably the top of the list.
If you watch the game,
okay, so
I won't shy away from anybody. Yeah, that's just my mentality. 9 times out of 10, I'm going to hit him.
Yeah, so, 9 times out of 10. I would prefer maybe 10 times out of 10, but I think what he's getting at there is he's going to hit guys when he has you're not going to find any shots of him kind of pulling up at the last moment. By today's standards, obviously you can't go rocking it in there like a missile anymore, but he does not shy away from contact, but like he's also very adept in man coverage. That's why he was able to play slot corner this year. He struggled when he first went there. And he wasn't happy about being thrust into the position. That's where if you start Googling Jimmie Ward, you start seeing a lot of stories about him being upset with being moved to slot corner. There's a little bit more nuance to it than that. I'm going to show you a clip here. This is one of the reasons I actually really like Jimmie Ward, because this is a man after my own heart. And honestly, this is a tip that guys like, what would I say? I would say Lonnie Johnson, I would say Ryan Mallett, like they could do well to listen to Jimmie Ward in how he handles this situation right here.
Oh, sorry about that. We got to start that over. I forgot. I got like 30 alarms.
That's what you do. You set alarms. You have an alarm for waking up. You have an alarm for when your first meeting is. You have an alarm for when you're supposed to take a nap. You have an alarm when you got to go buy lunch, everything. As a football player, where you're going to get fined thousands of dollars for being late or sometimes early. I played for a coach in Tom Coughlin who would fine guys for not being early enough at times. It's true. He knew that player was going to take it to appeal and the player would win the appeal, but Coughlin wanted you to adhere to your schedule that much. This is how you avoid getting fined. And I would tell a lot of younger NFL players, just go ahead and set as many alarms as possible.
Never refuse to play.
Okay, so this is him talking about the narrative that he didn't want to play nickel last year. So for you guys that don't know, I know a lot of you do, but the nickel cornerback or the slot corner is not the starting cornerback, but the third cornerback who comes in and a lot of times is either covering a third wide receiver or covering a tight end, like used in some capacity when the team goes to their nickel defense or their dime defense. So on a lot of teams, if it's a safety who's really good in coverage, sometimes that's a safety. But it's a guy that's going to be taken out of his comfort zone when he was playing slot corner last year, as opposed to playing free safety.
Nickel. I always wanted to play nickel because I watch a lot of film. The thing was I was telling my coaches, once I realized KK wasn't going to sign back, I said, hey, look, I need to start getting reps. I need to start getting reps at nickel just in case something happened and we don't have this problem. Like pit me at nickel in camp. Pit me at nickel in OTAs. They didn't want to do that because, they had Quez at the time. So I couldn't get any reps. It's like, okay, all right, I can't get any reps, but if something happened and somebody go down, you just gonna throw Jimmie Ward out there and tell me to sink or swim? And that's how I was basically protecting myself. Like, I don't want to put any bad film out there. This it's a whole nother world in that slot. I ended up figuring it out, but it's a whole nother world. And I appreciate the fans who had my back too.
Okay, so that's the first little part where you're thinking, oh, all right. Yeah, referred to himself in the third person. Jimmie Ward doesn't want to put any bad film out there. Look, a lot of times people say, Seth, how come you're not doing more YouTube videos? Seth Payne doesn't want to put bad YouTube videos out there. Seth Payne wants to deliver you quality content. Seth Payne needs to bring it every time, and Seth Payne can't bring it if he doesn't feel good about the situation he's in. So, like I'm telling you, this could very easily, if this were 2 years from now, this could end up being an Ed Reed type of situation. The key thing is that Jimmie Ward can still play football, as Jimmie Ward will tell you. And there was some offseason stuff last year, I guess, where Jimmie Ward claims that they had talked to him about maybe redoing his deal if he would agree to make a full-time move to slot corner. He really wants to play free safety. He'll play corner in a pinch, but I would imagine we haven't heard anything about this yet. I would imagine he's expecting to play safety alongside Jalen Pitre this year. And, at times in any given year, he might play 100 or 200 snaps at slot corner, but it's all part of just normally what a safety might do. I think he and Jalen Pitre are going to be used very creatively. I think both those guys will be able to blitz and disguise coverages. And I think that part of it's going to be really good for both Jimmie Ward, but also Jalen Pitre, obviously, and of course the tackling stuff. I can't remember next. Oh, I think I just sprinkled in a few little highlights here and there.
A little bit more.
So this is in the open field. Oh no, you know what? I apologize. This is the bad stuff. So this is actually going to be Jimmie Ward down here at the bottom of the screen. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but he's lined up against Travis Kelce. This was the first game back. This is the first game Jimmie Ward was coming back from injury this year, and he was playing slot corner, perhaps against his will, but he was doing it. And he's going up against Travis Kelce, and it did not go well for him this day. Don't worry, there's a happy ending to this. But here's one example of him matched up against Travis Kelce in the yellow shoes at the bottom.
Healthy today, though. They've got a 6-point lead in this second quarter as Mahomes has blocked up well. Looking, has Kelce again. Penalty flies. Kelce spins.
So you can't really see there that he had, gotten stumbled up a little bit, lost track of Kelce, obviously, somewhere along the way. And Kelce has this big catch. Then he is up here, the number 2 wide receiver, second from the top. That's going to be Jimmie Ward, lined up as the slot corner there.
3rd and 5. Mahomes rolls out. Flag flies. End zone caught for the touchdown.
He gets caught up in a lot of the traffic, and there's a lot to sort out there when you're man all over the field on that. It's just hard to sort out against a team like the Kansas City Chiefs. Like he had to play a position that he hadn't really been practicing, and he had to do it against the best quarterback in offense. Let's see here. He would be again against the number 2 receiver at the top of the sheet, the second guy from the top there. Yeah.
Mahomes fires. It's caught for the touchdown. Justin Watson.
So it was a rough beginning to the season when it came to that. And D'Amico is getting a lot of flack too for playing him there. I believe the next one we have in here is D'Amico talking about that and exactly why he wanted to. This was after the Kansas City loss. He faced a bunch of questions about, hey, why is Jimmie Ward playing out there at slot? It didn't seem to go that well.
Process behind playing Jimmie Ward at nickel, and is that something you envision being a long-term thing?
That's what we did last week for that game, and we'll see how it goes. But Jimmie is a unique player in the sense that I think Jimmie can do things that other players just can't do, right? Jimmie, his versatility is very unique. I mean, he's probably one of the only guys in this league that can do safety. He can come down in the box, play nickel. Like, he can do it all. Blitzing, covering. Not too many guys can do that. And that's a unique talent that Jimmie has, a God-given ability that not many guys have. So that's what makes Jimmie unique. That's what makes him stand out amongst any other players in this league.
And the other thing about that was I watched that whole press conference afterwards, and D'Amico was asking a lot of tough questions after a really tough loss in which they were close in that game, and then everything just fell apart in the second half. And, that's a lot of pressure on a defensive coordinator, obviously, especially when you're using a Jimmie Ward at slot. Jimmie Ward, got better as the season went along and then was playing very, very good slot corner in the playoffs. And yet, I think he ultimately wanted to be back at free safety, and he'll get a chance to do that. I think he's going to be, free in the modern NFL. There's not necessarily free safety, especially when you've got Jalen Pitre who can excel in that same position. I think they're going to use those guys ambidextrously, and sometimes one guy will be up in the box, the other guy will be back, and vice versa.
Expressed in the past.
Okay, so this is I don't know if you'll be able to hear the question. The reporter asks that Jimmie has expressed in the past that he wants to be at free safety. Had he had that conversation with D'Amico Ryans?
Us, and I'm sure to you guys, how much he prefers to be at free safety. Did you talk to him? What kind of conversations go on before that move happens?
Yeah, we have conversations. So that's between me and Jimmie. We had conversations about it.
Yeah, he kind of looks off to the side. I thought that D'Amico, what I meant to get back to was, I thought D'Amico did a pretty good job of answering questions after that really tough loss without losing his, temper or his cool. D'Amico's just not kind of wired that way. You could see a little bit of the agitation creeping in, but I don't think, nobody knows what it's going to be like until a guy is actually in that position. I don't think we'll ever get like the cantankerousness of, let's say, a Bill O'Brien. I don't think that, maybe a Gary Kubiak. Kubiak would get frustrated sometimes, but he was always very even-tempered afterwards. So when it comes to former Texans coaches post-game, he's somewhere between probably Gary Kubiak and Dom Capers, and those guys might be at the same level. At some point, somebody will claim that D'Amico maybe isn't fiery enough or doesn't tear into guys enough, because that's the way it goes if you're not winning every single game. But trust me, he's appropriately fiery when he needs to be.
How do you address?
Okay. Oh, now this was just okay. And this is, how will you address a team after a really bad loss like this Kansas City loss?
Sunday's game. Do you spend more time after a game where it's just one-sided as it was in that one?
No, we do the same, right? Tell the truth Mondays after a game, so we approach it the same. Whether it's a win or a loss, I approach all those games the same. We go in and we talk about the corrections, the mistakes that happen, why they happen, the technique, just so everyone understands, right, what happened on a particular play. So it's not just – we can never get in a situation where it's one person pointing a finger at someone else. It's all everybody knows in the room together. This is where the breakdown happened, and this is why, and this is what we have to do to fix it. So that's how we approach every game, win or loss.
Okay, now that sounds like pretty mundane stuff. I got to tell you, and this is where D'Amico, I think, as a former player, really gets it. Not all former players get it, and not all of them obviously make good coaches, but some guys are pretty good at transferring what might have frustrated them as a player, or where they saw things that could have been better as a player, and then they put it into action as a coach. It's amazing how different coaches are on Mondays after a game, where like sometimes you might spend 3 hours watching film, and a coach will be yelling and screaming and angry at you, and you still might not know exactly like what you're supposed to do. Like the communication. The problem with NFL teams is as much fun as it is to hang out with the guys. They're all run by a bunch of guys like me, like cavemen, like grunters and punchers, more so than people that are good at communicating. And a lot of times there's a whole lot of effort and energy spent on trying to communicate, but without actually communicating. Like D'Amico gets that, and he's talked about his preferred method of teaching is to have a guy teach it back to him. It's as simple as that. A lot of times there will be guys that just flat out don't know what they're supposed to be doing, and they don't want to get yelled at, and they're trying to do what they think their coach wants them to do. But on Mondays, like a lot of coaches waste a lot of time without actually communicating. I think that's one thing D'Amico has really stressed, is that communication part, that teaching part. I get excited about that stuff. I think like a lot of the extraneous BS is cut out of the equation when you take that approach to it. But back to Jimmie Ward, who, by the way, knows this system, can help be that communicator to help Jalen, Pitre, Derek Stingley, these other guys get on the right page quickly.
Did you find that a lot of them already knew without being told what had happened?
Oh, for sure. Our guys know. From the sideline, like looking at the pictures and the iPad from the pictures, like you can see what happened, on the sideline. So guys knew kind of what was going on, and it's just a matter of someone stepping up and making a play. At the end of the day in this game, right, you have to make plays on Sunday. And that's how I was telling the guys, like, if you want to be a great player, right, everybody's favorite player, their player they root for, their favorite player because they make plays on Sunday. And that's what guys have to step up and do, is not playing hero ball or being someone you're not. It just comes with everybody playing within the defense, playing within the scheme, doing what they're supposed to do, and you'll make the plays you're supposed to make.
Yeah, and again, that's kind of cliche stuff, except that some coaches live it and some coaches just kind of say it. That goes back to when Lenore, who was one of the cornerbacks this year, one of their starting cornerbacks, was really having some issues and being picked on by teams. Like D'Amico, there's stories I heard about the way D'Amico handled that just sounded just right. He talked to Lenore about, hey, look at this as an opportunity to make plays. You're going to get targeted a lot. Use that as an opportunity to make plays. And then you have to shuffle other guys around. And D'Amico did a really good job with that, of shuffling guys around, using safeties, linebackers, nickel cornerbacks like Jimmie Ward was playing this year to disguise some of the issues. And I think he's going to do the same thing for us. Okay, so we'll get super nerdy here for like 10 seconds. As far as Jimmie Ward playing the slot corner, I'm just going to look at the Pro Football Focus grades because, boy, I hope I didn't cut these. Okay, they're highlighted at the top. That's that first game versus Kansas City. Look all the way to the right. That's the coverage grade, 38.6. Pro Football Focus grades can be kind of dicey, but if you look at one guy's grades over the course of a season, you can get a kind of a feel for how it went for him. That first week was really dicey. Yellow is not great. Red is bad. You get to weeks 8 through 16 in the regular season, he's in the high 60s, low 70s. That's good. That's, if you're seeing green and light green, that was good. He was good in coverage playing slot corner for the remainder of the season after a really dicey start. When he got into the playoffs, starting at the end of the season, and then from week 17 through the end of the playoffs, that's when he was playing his best football. They had a really good game against the Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs. Like that's the good stuff right there. And again, that speaks to a guy that is going to hopefully show young guys how to advance along. And Jalen Pitre, Jalen Pitre is another guy that in college was really more of a linebacker than anything else. And now he's a guy that's going to play safety, but play it like a linebacker at times. And I think also go out and in certain situations, be like a slot corner, cover tight ends. There's going to be Jimmie Ward's going to be perfect for it. And Jimmie Ward, like the reason he's a captain is some guys you hire to be a mentor and they don't really give a damn about it. I think Jimmie Ward actually gives a damn about it. And he's also very vocal in terms of being a guy that's not going to accept less than what he thinks a guy should be doing. This is Jimmie Ward. Since we showed you earlier, Jimmie Ward expressing discontent maybe about the way it was handled and moving him to slot corner or nickel corner. D'Amico said that he had conversations with him, but it was, very vague as it tends to be. And you wonder, all right, were those guys okay with each other? Obviously, they're pretty much okay with each other because Jimmie Ward is going to come play for the Texans. But I thought really at the end of the season, this is, I believe, after the Cowboys playoff game, he spoke very highly of D'Amico Ryans.
And against a team with Dak Prescott, a team with CeeDee Lamb, what's that say about the job that D'Amico Ryans is doing?
Doing an outstanding job. I'm pretty sure D'Amico going to have a head coaching job after this year. You see it with the play calling, man. We went out there and shut down a playoff team, one of the best teams in the league this year. And, I got to give credit to the DB coaches, the D-line coaches, linebacker coaches, and, of course, Nico.
Also, I'm impressed with the vigorousness with which he's taking care of his hair, but also maintaining a train of thought. Something I could never do that. Just any simple thing. If you ask me to comb my hair while I'm actually praising somebody else, it'll fall apart, and I would end up praising the wrong person. So then he was asked a little bit more about that specific game.
So did you get an assist?
Hold on a second there. Oh, okay. They're going to ask him if he got an assist on, I believe it was the final play of the game. I think he made the tackle on the final play of the game of that Cowboys game. Let's see what he's talking about.
I get a pass breakup.
There's a deflected interception.
Somebody caught it. I got to work. I had a feeling it was.
Okay, so now they ask him about the final play of the game. Remember, that was the one where Former Dallas Cowboy Ezekiel Elliott played center, and it was just a disaster of a play. Jimmie Ward made the tackle on that play.
I'm gonna throw it to 9 because look what he does in space. You know, he's an elite returner. So Dak looked right at him, then he threw the ball high, so he really set him up. And I got to watch the tackle, but it was just a phenomenal, really another great play call from Nico. You know, to put us in that where we can eyes on the quarterback, where if he throw a check now, I can go and make the tackle.
Yeah, so he's just effusive. Oh, okay. This is just another thing I found. A lot of this is basically stuff I found searching for Jimmie Ward stuff, okay? So it gets, I think, should get a little, I did this like 3 days ago, and I don't remember putting in a lot of these things. This is Jimmie Ward when they were playing in Seattle, which is a very loud and very hostile place to play. Don't let the legal weed and everything else fool you. These Seahawks fans are angry folks. And this is him. He took a sign from a Seahawks fan and decided to dispose of it as they're getting ready to take the field. Mostly I'm respecting the dancing here. Hear the booing, man. That feels so good. It feels so good to get booed in the Pistons stadium. Like I've never wanted to be an internet troll, but like I kind of get it, just because I think to internet trolls, it feels a little bit like when you get booed in opposing stadium. It feels like you have a power and a control over people when like they're gonna boo you and you can make them boo you even harder if you make them unhappy. So I get it, trolls. I don't get many trolls on here. That's nice. By the way, 2 years, $13 million contract with a $4 million signing bonus, $8.5 million guaranteed, average annual salary, obviously, of $6.5 million. That was what was initially reported. There might be a little bit, a few different things. Oh yeah, and J-Rock, as J-Rock says, we even got the boombox guy from the 49ers. That's right. The boombox guy was the guy doing the dancing next to him with that big red boombox. So we'll take that. Boy, that's a big loss for them. That is a big loss for the 49ers. Okay, so this is going to be Jimmie Ward talking to a blogger by the name of, I believe, Grant Cohn. Some of you who listen to Houston sports radio, I'm guessing not just our station, but other stations as well, bastards. You probably heard Grant Cohn is one of the guys who criticized the Texans hiring DeMeco Ryans because he's just not that impressed with DeMeco Ryans. So Grant Cohn, very successful blogger. I think his full-time job is blogging about the 49ers. This is him interviewing Jimmie Ward, and I believe at the very beginning here, you're going to see Grant Cohn asking a question from a listener who's imploring Grant to ask Jimmie about Jimmie hating Grant Cohn. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing. Just know, when we first cut to this, Grant Cohn is reading a question from one of the viewers.
Enough with the softball questions. Jimmie, what do they say in the locker room about Grant? They don't like him, do they? LOL.
I'm saying, Grant, I'm just saying, I don't know, sometimes, some people be like, oh, Grant flop. But they don't like, I'm saying, like, when I see it, I laugh about it because, like I said, I didn't tell you this, but I grew up around a lot of assholes.
Okay.
I was raised by an asshole. Like, so I'm used to it. So the shit that you say, it bothers me because it's a challenge. And I'm like, okay, that's a challenge. Okay, you feel like I remember a couple times, especially in my early years, every time a new safety came in and somebody, you'd be like, oh, yeah, he's going to take Jimmie Ward's job or this and that. What does Jimmie do good and this and that? And I'm like, don't see it yet. I was like, I wonder, is he just trying to get views or something? But I was like, hey, I'm getting publicity. As long as my name in your mouth. So, yeah, it may not be the stuff I want to hear and this and that, but not everybody's not going to like you. So it's just, some people want people to say all good shit about them. But like I said, let me name Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Tom Brady. As good as those athletes are, it's somebody that don't like them who's talking hella shit about them.
Yep.
So, like I'm saying, like, I just feel like it's a privilege to even having somebody, to talk about your name, whether it's good or bad. As long as you the topic. That's just how I feel about it.
I appreciate it.
you. I feel like it should motivate you. Like a lot of your videos and interviews, you motivate me. A lot of other people motivated me too, but you motivate me. You push me, and that's, like I said, that's why I'm still playing. That's why I don't want to give up. That's why I don't see me retiring no time soon. As long as I stay healthy, I don't see it.
See, people don't know this about you, how driven you are.
Okay, yeah, that's where he started kissing butt there. It's like, people don't. Dude, I can't. I got to tell you, I got to hand it to Grant there. I don't know if a guy's sitting there basically saying that I've been full of crap in my opinion, but it motivates him like to just turn right into kissing his butt like that. Like, not because I'd be offended by him saying that, but just that it's just such an obvious kiss up. So, and I feel like people do know that about Jimmie Ward, that he does work really hard. Like that's pretty much a known thing about a lot of the good players in the NFL these days. Jimmie Ward does have, I think he's very active on Instagram Live. So if you're on Instagram, but then also he does a lot of Instagram Lives. I've showed one already. I think I might have one on here later. So he is the guy that's positively fueled, I think, by having a chip on his shoulder, by hearing some of that chatter and noise. So I'm sure he's going to clap back at a few people locally here at times. So that'll be fun, especially if the team is doing well when Jimmie Ward is here and he's clapping back at local media, then you guys can all enjoy piling on the local media, even if it's me. I implore you to. I encourage you to. So the other thing too is I showed my wife that video of him dancing and tearing up the Seahawks sign. And she just, like, my wife is, ever since she saw in Hard Knocks when Jonathan Joseph and Kareem Jackson were just like kind of messing around at various times and everything, she's been fascinated about like how much fun defensive backs have and kind of how they're better than wide receivers, because defensive backs have a sense of humor about themselves, where wide receivers, there tends to be more of a tendency towards diva behavior. I think it just comes down to, and I would say too, like, because I've told her, like, defensive backs are usually the funniest group in the meeting room, like the funniest at cracking on each other, but also taking the joke, because like to be a good defensive back, you have to have a sense of, like, you have to be able to forget things. Like, you got to be able to get torched and then come back and be okay with it. And I think that's probably correlated with also not taking yourself too seriously. So like Jimmie Ward's got that dark side to him, but he's also got the light side to him where he can laugh about it and also, not take things too seriously. I think I just sprinkled in another couple highlights here just to get the juices flowing.
Hey, you trying to pat me down, bitch, don't book me. Yeah, ho, I'm Yavo. I see how you look like a legs that down like grandmama. Say this bitch will put him to sleep like he just got a whip.
Okay, lots of run after the catch on these interceptions and turnovers, by the way. And also, if you're worried about his age, like, still very spry. These are all, I believe, from last. These are all from last. That says championship. Right.
Walk hard, my soda darker than whip. Ain't shit sweet. My niggas rolling like this. Like Nunu, a rap nigga trying to get. I got a freak bitch head good, feel like I know some nigga fell. I went from top to the bottom. Damn, if I flop, I'ma keep getting it growling. Take what? I bet a nigga get nada. She called me her father. I guess she my.
That wasn't him. That wasn't him with the illegal hit there, by the way. I wouldn't have minded if it was.
How about the car and the Cinder get loud? It's a dirty AK, but I make bullet shower. Nigga named Drake got a shot like nigga in the clean that fit while he serving that. You probably thought I'm from Austin. I'm having these problems. Hit from the wood. Look at all that.
Also, another thing defensive backs will do is return an interception even after the play's been blown dead, which I didn't. As soon as there's nothing, my legs are never more tired than on an interception, like trying to block for somebody after you've already been rushing the passer. So just a vast respect for that.
By the track, make him rewrite. His name Core, how he in the house. He giving me head, I be in the sky. Trying to run up these bands. Trying to sit on the couch. Live when I'm rapping outside of the him in the back like Ricio's over like Rio. Work me a hoe, make a little bitch do. And the ops better get.
You see, notice a theme too on some of these interceptions. Like, it's very clear he's playing in zone. He's got eyes on the quarterback, like that study / instinct side of the game is very strong with him. He's the kind of guy that if he's talking about how he's watching film last night, he actually was. Not just telling stories. Not just like, Aaron Rodgers claiming he read a book.
In the street, but I'm trying to go. Little nigga want him a kill. No cap here. Who trying to put a hole in your jail like a hole? So many crosses, I don't know. Run up on it one, I'ma make a little nigga. Get here, veggie. Got it. You trying to pat me down, bitch, don't book me. Yeah, ho, I'm Yavo. I see how you look like a legs that down like grandmama. Say this bitch will put him to sleep like he just got a whip. Walk hard, my soda.
Also, who's this? I don't know who this song is. I just picked this off of YouTube. Let me know who this artist is.
Darker than woods, ain't shit sweet. My niggas rolling like Nunu, a rap
Oh,
nigga.
and I was wondering. Okay, I was like, man, this is weird. I think Jimmie Ward comes in at the end on this 4th and 1, and he might be the last guy to hit the quarterback. He is. He's like at the top of the pile right now, like furthest towards the closest to the opposite sideline.
I got a freak bitch head good, feel like it's
Right here, short. Look at who he jumped. D'Amico. Very happy about that. Big Yavo. Sorry about that. I got Big Yavo. And then the dancing again. Got it all. He can play slot corner. He can play safety. He's a much better dancer than me. He's still very athletic and spry. I feel good about a lot of this. This is going to be him. Let's see. I think this is, wait a second.
Back to go against in practice.
Oh, okay. So this is Instagram Live. Give you a little taste of this. So this Jimmie Ward asked the question, who's the tougher quarterback to go against in practice, Jimmy Garoppolo or Trey Lance? I want to use it as a little bit of an opportunity to talk about defensive-minded coaches and things of that nature, not to mention the quarterback decision for the Texans.
Trey or Jimmy? Well, I don't really.
Shoot. Let me see that. Sorry, guys.
Who's the hardest quarterback to go against in practice? Trey or Jimmy? Well, I don't really. Of course, I gotta say, I'm gonna say both of them. Both of them kind of tough, but like I go against Trey more than I go against Jimmy, just because Trey be running the scout team, and Trey piss you off at practice, man. Only reason Trey piss you off at practice, obviously, because he'll probably complete a pass and then he'll look at you, and that piss DBs off. But he'll piss you off because he'll.
Hey, by the way, that reminds me too of like the stories about in how the defensive backs weren't supposed to talk to Russell Wilson if Russell Wilson had a bad play in Seattle. That is that's a bad thing to have a quarterback be protected that way. Like quarterbacks, just like Tom Brady. There were reports about Tom Brady jawing with defensive backs in New England. People acted like, oh, the horror. Like, no, that's just what they do. Like Tom Brady's one of the cockiest people on earth.
He'll move out the pocket and throw the ball. And we, in our head, we be thinking it's time and the clock. So if he throw the ball and it's a scramble route, so we've been covering probably for 6 or 7 or 8 seconds, and then somebody catch the ball, and then you got to get coached on that shit. Cause your coach gonna tell you, finish the play. Nah, man,
hey, that too. When your coach is coaching you to do something that it's actually not possible to do. The other thing that he's not going to say here probably, but then he might be thinking is that a lot of times the scout team quarterback will be scrambling, but it's like you're not allowed to get sacked in practice. So he would have gotten sacked already, but he just starts scrambling, and like as a defensive back especially, or as anybody, like the defensive lineman's not getting credit for the sack. The defensive back is having to play more. But Trey Lance obviously has that ability.
The man was sacked 2 times, but that's like
he said it. Yeah.
It's all.
I'm gonna play D'Amico after this, talking about Hufanga, the safety. So as far as what Jimmie Ward was just saying, when it comes to athletic quarterbacks, like defensive minded head coaches are suckers for athletic quarterbacks because they know what a pain in the butt it is to play against them. Rex Ryan, when he signed Tim Tebow, not that, that was kind of a weird situation. It wasn't bringing him in as the chosen one or anything, but Rex Ryan talked about that. I remember about like, just you learn to respect those guys because they destroy your game plan. You think you have the perfect game plan, but all it takes is one Mike Vick 90-yard scramble and everything's screwed. Or the long ball, when a quarterback scrambles, hits the deep ball, nobody can cover for 7 seconds. Somebody's going to be open. So I don't know how much that would factor into D'Amico's input, into this draft class. It would really mostly be if somehow D'Amico likes Anthony Richardson or Will Levis. better than the top two guys, I suppose. I think that ultimately DeMeco is probably going to defer to Nick if there needs to be anybody deferential going on there. I'm not really big into the like who's got the final say or final decision. Other than that, I think this will be, when it comes to the draft, this will be a GM directed operation, but with obviously a lot of cooperation from the head coach. And it's not anything, in my opinion, that ever needs to be formalized. If guys work well together, they work well together. If you need your daddy, the owner, to step in and settle a difference between you two or resolve something, then I think you should both get fired. Like, it's just not the right fit. So this is going to be DeMeco. And real quick, I'll answer this question because I know a lot of you have just joined over the last few minutes. Seth, what's your opinion on the 1 to 2 year deal strategy of Nick? Do you think he's just protecting future cap space and not overpaying for someone he doesn't view as a long-term option? Yes, I do believe that's what he's doing. And I also think that it's a scaled up version of what he has been doing the last 2 years, which was signing veteran players to 1 and 2 year deals because you've got all these draft picks, especially now with the Deshaun Watson draft picks. You've got all these draft picks. You want guys who are viable veterans, but who can ideally help train and at the very least be examples for. They don't have to mentor the younger guys. They need to be examples for the young guys who are coming into the league, because it's not so hard. It's not so easy for a lot of guys to just come in and know exactly how to act like a true professional. You want to set a certain standard. So guys like Jimmie Ward are capable of doing that. So I'm for it. I don't think that right now is the time for the Texans to be spending heavily on high dollar impact agents. I think you need to save cap space for the rookies who will need their new contracts if everything's going well in 3 or 4 years. So yeah, you want the cap space for that. And then B, if I'm going to pay $100 million for a free agent, I don't want the first $40 million I spend to be kind of wasted on rebuilding years. I'd rather just do this the slow way. And by the slow way, let's remember, the Giants made the playoffs this year in a year where they were completely hitting the reset button in a lot of ways. They were clearing cap space. So it doesn't mean that they can't be good sooner than 3 years from now. It just means that you don't need to hire Michelangelo to patch up the holes in your drywall. That's the analogy Sean Pendergast and I came up with the other day. So like right now, signing a lot of the big name guys would be like hiring Michelangelo or a world-class painter to patch up the holes in your drywall. We need patches in the drywall. We need to replace rotting drywall in places. And that's the good strategy, in my opinion, right now. So this is going to be DeMeco talking about Hufanga, the safety, who is a 5th round pick and has turned into one of the best safeties in the league. And I get excited when I start thinking about, okay, DeMeco and Jimmie Ward is part of a package that's tutoring young Jalen Pitre.
About the preparation throughout the week, and that's where he sets himself apart. And I think I've said it before, and you see it right there on that particular play, right? He's able to not just be a robot out there. We want our guys to be football players, and instinctually, when you're able to see something and trigger on it, right, that's what makes you a special player. Some guys can see something, but it's also, I got to stick to my rules and just be a robot. Huff is not a robot on the field. That's what allows him to stick out. That's what allows him to make the plays he's made. That's what allowed him to be like one of the best safeties in the league right now because of his instincts, and he's not scared to go make a play when it calls for him to go make a play.
Okay, so when DeMeco talks about that, like I can't help but think about a story I've told a couple times on the radio. But DeMeco was a rookie when I was in my final year in the NFL. And at the time, the defensive coordinator was Richard Smith. And Richard Smith had not had the same level of success as a defensive coordinator that DeMeco Ryans has had. There was a play where in the game, I had told Travis Johnson I told him pass was coming. I knew I had a tell on the offense, and I could tell it was going to be pass. So I yelled jet, jet, jet. And so Travis hears that and kind of loosens up his alignment. We'd been in kind of a run defense alignment, and he loosened up his alignment, got in the gap, and rushed the passer, just shot the gap at the snap. And Richard Smith asks in this meeting as we're watching the film, like, hey, Travis, why'd you do that? Travis says, because I thought it was pass. And Richard Smith starts tearing into Travis, like, why would you do that? You can't do that. So I raised my hand. I was like, Coach, it was, I told him that. I told him jet. And so Richard Smith, I guess I showed him up in his own meeting. So he had to do this, but he started tearing into me. But it's because Richard Smith doesn't have a clue about what his players are and are not capable of. Whereas D'Amico is, I think, and there are guys like Hufanga or Jalen Pitre or Jimmie Ward who you trust that they've done enough film work, they have good instincts, and that you're going to give them latitude to freelance at specific moments. If you got a guy who's freelancing all the time, then it's bad. But it's like with JJ. JJ was allowed to freelance because JJ was good at freelancing. You don't let every schmuck freelance. You let the guys that actually know what they're doing do it. And with Hufanga, one thing that I've been really impressed with, and I saw this as a reflection of D'Amico as a defensive coordinator, when you would watch Hufanga time his blitzes up, or other guys on the 49ers time their blitzes up, they were very, very disciplined about it. You could tell they knew what the quarterback's habits were and when they would call for the ball, by watching the play clock. They wouldn't bite on hard counts. It's one of the worst things you can do as a blitzer is when you bite on a hard count. That's when Peyton Manning decides to reset everything and adjust to whatever blitz was coming because he saw that the safety bit on the hard count. Like D'Amico's guys didn't do that, and a lot of that just comes down to the discipline of how they're taught. Mike Zimmer's defenses have always been like that. You could watch a Mike Zimmer defense and you'd say, oh, all right, yeah, these guys are just flat out like every wacky zany idea that defensive coordinators come up with. He's doing some of it, but he's just executing it perfectly. And that's what D'Amico's defenses look like these last couple of years. It's never just about like, hey, what schemes can you come up with? It's like, can you get guys to actually do this? Like, I've got a great plan, but if you can't execute the plan sucks. So D'Amico's been good at finding the balance there. Okay, so this is big. So earlier you guys asked about the tackling. And I know some questions about Nico Collins in there. I think because we've been talking about D'Amico, it's hard not to. So, Jalen Pitre missed a whole bunch of tackles this year. I believe he was leading in missed tackles, or at least top 5 in missed tackles in the NFL. He also made a boatload of tackles too. The problem is it's not just a matter of having more opportunities to miss tackles. His missed tackle rate was top 5 amongst safeties in the league, like the rate. So 20% missed tackle rate. That was 1 out of 5 tackles that he was attempting, he missed. I'll make some excuses or explanations for him. Part of it was that the front 7 was so bad that it was really hard for him to come up and tackle guys like Derrick Henry when Derrick Henry hadn't been impeded at all. The level of difficulty was harder, but he does need to continue to improve. I thought he got better as the season went along, but it still reared its ugly head at times. I want you to look. This is going to be a couple little snippets out of a Pete Carroll video about form tackling and how they teach it in Seattle. That's important because they use rugby style tackling in Seattle, and some of the lineage of the Seattle defense filtered its way into San Francisco, and they use the same rugby techniques to teach tackling in San Francisco. They've been in the top 10 for missed tackles, genuinely, like in a good way, for, I guess, top 10 for fewest missed tackles, pretty consistently over these last few years, often in the top 3. And a lot of it comes down to just these techniques. I just snipped out a few little bits so you could see what I'm talking about.
Down, our tackling system features shoulder tackling and a renewed emphasis to take the head out of tackling. We are a shoulder leverage tackling team. We have found that we can practice and drill our tackling without pads or a helmet. Tracking is closing the distance with the ball carrier while maintaining our leverage.
So this is the good stuff here where you're going to see some good examples of safeties like Earl Thomas coming from deep, like at full speed and still settling in and making the tackle. A lot of it is like focusing on the near hip and then using the sideline as your ally. Like a lot of young guys just really don't understand that the sideline is an extra tackler for you. Like that's something you're supposed to use the sideline to your advantage, and not a lot of young guys necessarily have the right feel for that.
As we approach making contact, we key the near hip of the ball carrier. Number 31 tracks the near hip as he closes the distance with the wide receiver. Number 29 is tracking the
That's, I believe, one Arian Foster being tracked by one Earl Mitchell.
near hip, using the boundary as leverage as he makes a sideline tackle. We are a shoulder tackling team. Our hawk tackle is a shoulder leverage tackle contacting the ball carrier on the thighs.
It's cold outside.
Yeah, so, and then we'll have a few more highlights here for a minute. Oh, those are Jalen Pitre highlights I think I have on there in like 380 resolution. Enjoy that. So, yeah, as DJ Durrell, he knows what I'm talking about. They call it hawk tackling, tracking the near hip of the ball carrier and rolling. Yeah, the rolling part is the interesting thing. And also, you know, I think in old school, you would coach to put your head in front of the ball carrier, kind of as one extra obstacle for him, and which makes a lot of sense, except that I still get pain in my neck from all the stingers I got doing that, I think. So that was, now they coach to put your head, you know, you focus on the near hip, you put your head behind the ball carrier, you roll, and it's a lot of just good quality sound rugby tackling. The cool thing is you can practice it with no pads on. And like for football coaches who complain about how, well, guys don't know how to tackle today because we never wear pads. Like, there's teams out there that are doing a good job of it and they're not practicing in pads. It's you just got to work at it. You got to actually give a damn about it. So I think that this is some Jalen Pitre highlights I put in here just for the hell of it.
Hit. Takes it out.
Pitre, I think, has done a good job of like knowing when to go for a form tackle and then sometimes knowing when to dive at a guy's legs. There's like sometimes nothing
Jalen Pitre continues to impress.
But I think one thing you'll find,
Rib injury sustained last week.
like he's not rapping there, but sometimes trying to rap. He's gonna get your shoulders separated.
Play action. Pitre coming in, and he's got his.
He was going for the suplex there, and he couldn't quite get it. He needs some leveraging. He needs some wrestling experience right there. He didn't have the right position for his play.
Play action. Pitre coming in, and he's got
He's too low on the hip there.
What a day for Jalen Pitre. His first 2 career interceptions.
Shout out to the Saberhawks, Sabercats, excuse me, with the hawk tackling.
He is cut down by Jalen Pitre. Nice tackle by the rookie out of Baylor.
I hope Derrick Henry doesn't get.
Henry. Oh, hit hard by Jalen.
Man, all right, that game, like, there's some bad missed tackles by Jalen Pitre this year, but he also had some really nice tackles against like Derrick Henry. ETN got him one time real bad, but he had another couple plays against ETN.
Jalen Pitre, such an impressive rookie. Watson faking the shove to the end zone. It's picked off.
Oh, and then like the dropped interceptions too. That's another thing that Pitre can improve on. Where I mean, there's a real good chance that Pitre has an astounding.
This has been the Jalen Pitre drive. He has really.
And Jimmie Ward is a big part of it. D'Amico Ryans is a big part of it. And I think just Jalen Pitre himself is like, he's a good kid, you know? Like he's, that was, you can't do that anymore. Don't do that.
Pocket throws on the run, passes it.
I think that was another illegal one right here.
Everybody know me round my way. I'm a bonafide gangster gunslinger. I let it all rock.
Boy, Tyreek Hill takes a
smack. I made it happen for him. My lips started touching paper. I was happy for him.
Yeah, okay, like that's just focusing on playing clean football.
Play action from Tagovailoa. That pass is picked. It's Pitre.
Look, how does Tagovailoa make that throw?
Until it ain't in the back of the Maybach paper plates.
Gallop on the sideline, blasted.
Dude, he had more big hits than I even remember.
I'm on a private jet, just me and Bay. We having dinner And all
Tua steps up.
I can come and get you. I'm about my issue. I don't know about you, but I'm going to deliver. I'ma pop my pistol. I'ma hop my shoe. I'ma run go get him. The little say she ready to eat.
Okay, cool. This it's gonna be good. It's gonna be really good. It's gonna be good with D'Amico actually coaching tackling instead of like the Texans with Lovey Smith just I guess hoping that tackling will get better. Remember, tackling was amongst the worst in the league with Lovey.
Combo of Heinisch and Pitre, two rookies, one from Notre Dame, the other from Baylor, make the play. Walloped on that initial hit.
Treat the suburbs like the projects, turn the mansion to the trap highs. Old pistol whip. I ain't even noticed. I just
immediately. Pitre is dishing out some punishment today.
Oh, I hadn't. Did you guys catch that? Pitre is dishing out some punishment today. I can't. That's awful, but I respect it.
It's Ezekiel. Jalen Pitre again.
Yeah, I'm a rapper. I smoke rents. As you snatching grab, walking to the trunk. I'm at the Panthers arena.
You guys want Ezekiel Elliott?
Looking like Ari and Tiny, you know, all at once. This Drake gon' change it, get the meaner as soon as I up.
Herbert.
And I'ma tell you exactly why. Stay out your feelings. I don't be in your business by who you. I keep a little swoop. As soon as I dust, get some new dust. Stay at that bag. Go get that sack all by myself. Hit the intersection. Unload it all.
Last minute and a half. They've scored 17 unanswered jams.
Okay, so yeah, that's the whole thing about a lot of these.
Kodak the boss, Kodak the blessing. Kill that boy, kill that.
Let's see the hell no. Ezekiel Elliott. J-Rock says if he's under 15 million, then hell yeah. Some of the top 5 gigs the coaching award is non-field mentoring. I think the thing about Pitre is think about like Stephon Diggs.
You want never this.
Trayvon Diggs. His big plays are awesome, and his bad plays. Well, I mean, like people know that he's too erratic, but when you're on a good defense, there's not as many opportunities for bad plays. Especially like Jalen Pitre, his bad plays have been missed tackles. So if the defense is actually good, there's fewer opportunities for those for bad plays because other guys are actually making the plays for you, and then you also your good plays, like all those hits. Like, honestly, I hadn't remembered that many big hits. And that's just going through this season of one compilation from this. Obviously, this is the only season he's been able to play. You're on a good defense. You're playing in prime time. Like, those things show up a lot more. I do think that he's not as athletic as some of the very top elite safeties. But, you know, like those guys, those guys also have been injured a little bit. Yeah, you make up for it by dependability and instinct and football IQ, and I think he has that in a lot of ways that other guys don't. I'm going to show you one last thing because I had completely forgotten about this until it popped up on YouTube, which was 4 years ago. Do you guys remember this? This was during the combined practice between the 49ers and the Texans. Jimmie Ward, DeAndre Hopkins going at it. And I can't tell. Let me turn it up a little bit here. Like you have Richard Sherman right there in the mix. You got, is that, like they're at the bottom of a big old scrum there. Stevie Mitchell. I think in 2018 was number 11 camp would have been Stevie Mitchell, right? He's just kind of sitting around, standing around. I think that might be old Ray Wright, the old Texan strength coach who was with San Francisco. Remember, there were a bunch of guys there at the time. And then was Bill O'Brien. There's Bill O'Brien. He's like, O'Brien was right in the middle. I remember that. O'Brien being in the middle of everything. DeAndre got his, oh boy. Okay, so he sees that his shoulder pad is out. I don't know. They downplayed it at the end of that thing, but that was that guy that looks like O'Brien. Oh, I can't remember who he is. He looks like O'Brien, but he's got that same O'Brien look on his face. But okay, going back to the very beginning here. You've got DeAndre Hopkins. You got those two young ladies there to the right that are just couldn't be more pleased to be in direct sight of Deshaun Watson, not DeAndre Hopkins, Deshaun Watson, who at that time, could do no wrong. He's everybody's hero. So let's see. Oh, number 5. Who is 5? So make a throw. Jimmie Ward goes after the football. Did DeAndre even have his helmet on? Yeah, DeAndre's helmet is down. So Jimmie Ward must have. Oh, there we go, right there. So Jimmie Ward is playing pretty aggressively. Helmet came off. Man. And DeAndre Hopkins, I'm guessing, wasn't too happy about that. Ward then goes after the ball. D-Hop was already probably kind of trying to check his temper, and then Ward goes after the ball. I feel like Jimmie was just looking for a fight at that point. DeAndre pushes back. There's some distraught guy between them both. Tell him to stop the violence. Think of the children. DeAndre lands a punch to the face mask. At first, I thought that it was all just shoving. Richard Sherman assessing the situation, wondering if he's not a little too old to get into this whole thing, but also probably the percolating a little bit. Red shirt gets in the way. Nothing to see here. By the time we come back to it, I feel like DeAndre has probably been separated from Jimmie Ward. No, they're right there at the bottom, except somebody else is on top of DeAndre. Richard Sherman off to the side. And man, I don't know if you guys have ever been at the bottom of a scrum like this, but it's the most claustrophobic thing ever because you're amped up. You can't breathe from the beginning because it's not like you're in the middle of a boxing match where you went out there with measured breath or anything. You got hot and angry and you saw red and start fighting and you lose your endurance real quick. Boy, those were the days. All right, so Jimmie Ward, he's got a little spice to him, okay? You don't have to worry about Jimmie Ward ducking away from any fights. And very excited about Jimmie Ward. I'll do a complete assessment of training camp and everything that goes along with it. Or excuse me, not training camp, the free agency period, and take some questions about anything else. But appreciate you guys joining me and have a good, hopefully, maybe there was a signing here while I was on here and not paying attention. Take it easy, everybody.